There is a misunderstanding in fitness that I think is actively keeping some people less fit than they could be, and that is you don't have to work out to be fit, or do you? It depends on how you define working out. Now, working out can be cool and beneficial, and I started a YouTube channel around it, but I do think there is a lazy way to fitness or a non-enthusiast way to fitness that a lot of people are already on. And there are some people who want the benefits of working out that they've heard, like living longer, especially as they get older, and having improved quality of life, but they just aren't passionate about working out. So that sounds like you or a friend, then hopefully this can help. But first, I think it's important to understand why we might have this perception of fitness. And do you know how hard it is to get everyone to agree on something? And yet, if you type into a search engine of your choice, exercise is healthy? Enter, then you'll see a lot of people do agree that exercise is healthy, myself included. Sadly, not everyone agrees, but I think a large majority do. So we have that first step. But the next step is, what do you think of when you think of exercise? Now, you might think of biking, swimming, maybe sports, but I think a lot of people think about gym stuff, like working out stuff. So like going in, lifting weights, running on treadmills, and even calisthenics stuff like push-ups and pull-ups. So that is fitness, yes, I would say. But is that necessarily fitness and health? Have you noticed that fitness and health is kind of just like thrown in there, like the fitness center, and it's like, hey, join our center for fitness and health. Sign up today, exercise is good for you. So this brings up an interesting question, which is fitness and health the same thing? Or perhaps a more visual example is someone who is a paragon of fitness, an ideal of fitness, also a paragon of health? And perhaps not necessarily. Right? So we think of someone who's perfectly healthy in your mind, think of someone who's perfectly healthy, and we think of someone who's perfectly fit. And perfectly fit has some associations, again, with exercise and workout culture, right? Which I don't think is bad at all, but you think of someone who is quite athletic looking, muscular, lean, not necessarily the biggest, but quite sporty looking, right? And from here we can think of that sadly there are a lot of people who looked like that, and you could say were very good at their sport and very athletic and perhaps very muscular and strong, who may have unfortunately had some health side effects or maybe even died early because they trained and may have put some things in their body in pursuit of that fitness and ability that might have ended up making them less healthy. So I would say no, they're not quite the same thing. It makes sense, they're connected, they're deservedly so, I would say, but they're not quite the same thing. Fitness and health as a Venn diagram is not quite a circle. There's just some lumps on the side. But of course there is research, and of course there are very intelligent, well-read people talking about how exercise is good for you. And Hampton, didn't you show all those things? Didn't you say everyone agrees that exercise is healthy? What happened to that? Why are you backtracking? And I'm not trying to confuse anyone. What I'm trying to say is that there are some pursuits that are separate that we might have conflated, we might have connected in our mind. So if we think about someone who is using physical activity for the purpose of being healthy and someone exercising for the purpose of getting stronger or looking very muscular, and someone training for the purpose of being very good at their sport, I would say these are related, but they're slightly separate. And what this leads to is some people think, when they hear about the benefits of exercise, and they say, well, I want to be healthy. I really have no interest in getting that much stronger or being muscular, and I'm not really an athlete. And they think, well, in order for me to be healthy, which is what I've heard, I have to do this stuff, and they end up not doing it, which can be an issue. I just want to say here, I've kind of hinted at it throughout the video, but I like both the idea of doing push-ups and pull-ups and even lifting weights. And there is some research showing benefits of just having more muscle. So there is that. I'm not dissuading anyone, but I also know that as good as resistance training can be for you, some people are just very resistant to that. And if you are someone who is passionate about fitness, you may have experienced this with your friends and family. You're trying to get them into it, and there is just someone there's like a grandma or someone. It's like there's no way to get them in a gym. There's not even real. You can kind of get them into calisthenics, but they're like, they just don't really want to do it. But yet some of them have the health benefits. They can or they can't get the benefits of physical activity. And here are some ideas. And many of you already know this, but every video we get a few thousand new people. So there is a free online fitness routine if you want to get started working out from home that can help you build up the things like push-ups, pull-ups, and squats. You can start with a variation that you can do, practice it, and then move on when you're strong enough. And if you want an app that can walk you through that, tell you what exercises to do, when to rest, and when to move on, we also have that. And we have a message board here if you want trainers to help you with fitness questions. So if you want some of the benefits of physical activity and you don't really like working out, here are 3 ideas. And I'll start with one that's relatively difficult to set up first, but then you don't really have to think about it. And then I'll have one where you can kind of go right into it, but then you have to actively maintain it and want to do it. And then I'll have one that's kind of in the middle. And the first is just changing your environment. So I live in the US here, and I studied in Germany for a semester. And when I was there, a lot of people have noted this, that a lot of European places are more walkable and people just walk more. I think they walk like on average like twice as much as Americans, right? And from this, we naturally get more physical activity. Now, I wanna say like the place I live, the US is a big place. The place I live, I walk all the time. Right? I don't necessarily have to walk to the store, but I enjoy walking, right, through different seasons, and you might see people walking in the background here. So it's not necessarily just having the opportunity to walk, but maybe a little of a culture or a subculture of walking. When I lived there, I didn't have a car, so I walked to the store, I walked to school, I walked to the coffee shop, and I ended up walking like on the regular, I hit like 20,000 steps. You know, there was one day where I hit 35,000, right? And I know some people do way more, just regular people who may never consider themselves exercise enthusiasts, may regularly be getting more activity than some fitness enthusiasts in the US, or certainly their counterparts in the US. Now, that's just walking, and there's other stuff you can do for fitness, of course. But from here, the lesson I would learn is that if you just want to change the environment you're in, or change what you usually do, then you can naturally get more exercise that way. You can get more movement. If you're like, hey, instead of driving down the road, and obviously only do this if you can do it safely, I'm gonna walk to the store and grab the groceries and come back, and I'll just think about doing that. Or if you happen to be moving anyway, then you may want to consider moving to a place that gives you the opportunity, if you want, to walk or move to these places. If you happen to be moving right now anyway, then that might be something to consider, right? If you don't want to drive sometimes, or you don't want to take transportation somewhere, can you walk to get the things you need safely and securely? But of course, most people won't move just for having the benefit of walking more, but you can also change your work environment. So some people, again, like, don't change your workplace just based on this. But some people actively choose a job that gives them more physical activity. So they naturally have that. Now, they may not be the most muscular, they may not be the most mobile. It's like having a good routine is still good for you in that sense, and that can cover a lot of bases. But some people just choose a physically active job and they get the benefits of exercise without ever really wanting to go work out. But those are relatively high friction options, right? Like, fairly few people watch this video and be like, you know what? Because Hampton said so, I'm going to move somewhere else entirely, right? So, and I'm going to get a new job because Hampton said it can help me move around more, right? If nothing else, you can have it kind of in your back of your head for when you're moving locations or moving jobs. But for most people, that's not really something they're going to do right now. But something you can pick up is a hobby, right? So it usually requires a little bit of setup there because you have to learn about the hobby, but afterwards it can be a little bit more seamless, especially if you do it with someone. So having someone to kind of motivate you, and especially if you like it, it can be a lot of fun and you can get a lot of activity relatively easily in that sense. So this can be a sport. So you can be learning basketball or tennis, or I think pickleball is big. How many of you play pickleball? I have never tried it. I've seen people play it and I've heard that it's a lot of fun. I didn't even know pickles had balls. And these things like this are sometimes called life hacks, right? Like, get a hobby that involves you moving around and you'll move around more, right? Which is cool, and if that excites you, please go ahead and do that. But I think this isn't even a life hack. This is part of life. Like, one of the interesting, it feels like an integral part of life. It's like pursuing something you like, a hobby, something you enjoy doing by yourself or with a friend, and doing that and just like being in the zone on that makes you a little bit more, I don't want to say numb, but like you're not like dragging your feet as much. Like, you want to move around. Like, if you are really just like all in on bird watching or like that, right there, I don't know that many birds, but that right there is a very special looking, colorful bird. And I'm going to walk all the way. You can't really see it, but there's like a cliff over there. I'm gonna spend the 3 hours hiking over there just to be like, hey, I'm watching you, bird. Always watching. I recently rewatched Monsters, Inc. and Monsters University, so that line's in my head. So that last one is probably the most actionable for a lot of people, just finding something that they might enjoy doing and exploring that, and hopefully they end up really liking and say, oh, I'll just integrate that into my life, and I will make a little bit of time for that sport or hobby, and I can get my physical movement through there. Maybe I'll integrate it with like a mobility or a strength or calisthenics routine, and I can kind of get like a big chunk of the benefits of fitness without ever having to really work out that much. Or sorry, just not really enjoying working out, because mobility and strength are technically working out. But some people may not like that. Some people say, well, I don't really have time to pick up a new hobby, and like for many different reasons, it's just not realistic for me to go out and start playing tennis or start playing basketball. I get that. You know, we're all in different situations. And something you can do that requires almost no setup, but requires a little bit more like consistent effort into doing it, is just working movement into your habits, by adjusting your habits to involve some physical movement. And what this can look like is if you talk with some friends on the phone, instead of sitting and doing it, you can walk and do it. So like around here, it's a relatively cool park, so you can just walk in a circle. But if you're at home, you can walk around your apartment, right? Or if you have those mini stepper things that I reviewed, Ulysses the editor, you can put the mini stepper review I did. You can do that while watching TV rather than just watching TV. You can do push-ups while watching TV. And this involves, I guess, working out, but you're integrating the habit of movement into another thing that you already do, if that makes sense. So you pick something that you already do that doesn't require your full attention, like watching TV or talking to friends or listening to YouTube videos, and you just do that while walking or something. So those are just some ideas. There are probably tons of other ideas that you might have had. You're like, Hampton, why didn't you mention that? I was like, yeah, please mention them below on how you can move if you don't want to work out. Ultimately, once again, I like the idea of people working out. I like calisthenics. I named my channel Hybrid Calisthenics, not hybrid move without working out, but I just know that there's some people that'll just never really go to the gym. And those people I found, there's a subset that, yeah, they're a little bit more open to, you know, wall push-ups and pull-ups and things like that. But some of them are just really not going to be passionate about working out. And if we still want them to be healthy, well, and happy, then we might introduce them to the idea of movement without working out, to where they're still moving around and getting a lot of the benefits of exercise and physical activity without having to do like up, down resistance training, even though that can be pretty cool. Have a wonderful, beautiful day, my friend. And we have a webtoon about a traveling merchant, if that sounds interesting to you.